AJ, thank you so much for doing this and the time that you've given us. It's really, really appreciate you doing this for us.
You're welcome, man. Glad to be here.
You refer often in the book to the life that you had and the fact that it wasn't the life that you felt you were made for.
Yeah.
And there's one particular point in the book where you say that you wanted to stop once and for all living some other dude's life.
Yeah.
And I guess that's where it all started for you. So what was this other dude's life, and what was it that triggered that realisation that that wasn't the life you were made for?
That's a good question. To answer that, I'll back up just a little bit. Basically, when I was in high school, I was a dude that could put a 9-inch ball on an 18-inch hoop, and that's what I did. And when I sat there with my guidance counselor, my senior year, I was deciding, what university I was going to go to. Her name was Miss Mitchell, fantastic woman. No, she wasn't. When I was sitting there, and Melissa was in the room at the time, and I was asking her, what university you think I was in, and I had a couple of options, whatever. This is your guidance counselor, and and she says, she's like, let me just stop you right there. AJ, a guy like you, I don't know that you should be looking into university. I think maybe you should become a mechanic. Now, nothing against mechanics. I know some lovely mechanics, but that's obviously not what you want to hear, your senior year in high school. So from that moment on in my life, I decided that I was going to prove that bitch wrong. And I was going to prove everybody wrong in my life that had told me that I wasn't good enough and that I was just a punk and that I would amount to nothing. And I mean, what's the easiest way to quantify success? Dollars. Yeah. So when I sat down and I decided, I did get into university. Fuck you, Miss Mitchell. and when I did get into university, I sat down at a Barnes and Nobles and I was deciding, what I would study, what my course of study would be. And at the time, they had these books, and I don't know if they have them anymore. I'm sure they do, but it says degrees that you can study, and then income potential over time. So it's just I looked for the things that would be up and to the right, and that was it. So I kind of keyed in on accounting and finance in particular. I saw these graphs, and I was like, well, that's it. This is how I'm going to do it. And I ended up in university doing extremely well. I worked very, very hard. I graduated. In 3 years with 3 degrees, top of my class, summa cum laude, number 1 in my class, and all hell bent on this kind of chip on my shoulder, that I was going to prove the world wrong about me. And when I graduated, I ended up getting, taking the biggest offer from the largest firm that I could find that was offering, with the largest signing bonus. I spent my early 20s making vertical leaps from one firm to the next, which... vertical leaps are, common in the corporate world, where it's like you basically just leverage one position to go to the next. And as soon as you get that new position, all you're looking for is the next leverage, so you're kind of pulling those levers, which led me to a place in my mid-20s where I learned how to play this game extraordinarily well. And I had a corner office in Manhattan. And I was making a 6-figure salary with a huge bonus. And unfortunately, there was this little problem that I hated my life, and I despised the fact that, and I had always despised the fact, once I got into the corporate world, that I had basically relinquished my life for the hours of my one and only life, for more money at every turn. So on December 31st, 2007, I was offered this promotion, and from my boss, and that was the day that it all changed for me. And this promotion would have put me number 2 in my company. It meant that I would have been minted in New York banker terms.
So Miss Mitchell would have loved that.
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of soaked this in. This was 4 days before Melissa and I were going to get married, and I kind of soaked this news in that I was getting this promotion. And it was going to come with a raise and all these other things. And I walked out of his office, and I walked into my own, and I sat there and I looked over the Manhattan skyline, and I just started to cry because I recognized that I was trapped. And it went on. It was about 10 minutes. It was the most depressing moment of my life. And even though I was very, very good at this work and this life, I hated it, and I hated myself for being a part of it. And I recognized, and the reason why I was so depressed, and the reason why I was crying is because I recognized that there was no way that I was going to be able to walk away from that type of money. And I had always had these dreams of going out and changing the world and doing extraordinary things and living a life of adventure and a life of meaning, a life like you live right now and the work that you do with your wife. But I recognized that there was no way I was going to do that. And I saw these visions of myself as a 60-year-old man looking back at me then, mourning the glory of this life that could have been. And that is the moment, that's a long answer to a short question, but that was the moment that it just hit me that maybe, just maybe, I had been duped into living some other dude's life. Yeah. And maybe, just maybe, I could leave right then and there, and that if I didn't leave right then and there, that I was going to be that guy for the rest of mine. And the prospect of seeing your life played out as a script, your one and only life as a script that you don't want any part in, it was so terrifying that it was more terrifying than the prospect of how I was going to pay rent the next month. So. Yeah. That's when I came to that realization, and that's why I did. And I recognize that I had one of two decisions. I play it out, I play this hand out, and I know how it's going to end, or I walk away from everything that I've ever known.
So kind of like that scene from in the Matrix, you got your red pill, blue pill moment.
Yeah, sure.
There, and you chose the red pill.
Yeah.
So what's going through your mind at that stage? And obviously, you said you just cried and you had that realization, but you made that decision to, right, I can't carry on this way. I'm not going to live that life.
Right.
So when you make that decision, I mean, is it excitement? Is it turmoil? Because I think that's what holds a lot of people back, isn't it? They get to that point, but actually there's something triggers in their brain that emotion is too strong and they can't then take the step that you took.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for me, it was a mixture. What had always kept me there was security, safety, compliance, and fear. Kept me in this life that wasn't mine, wearing this costume that wasn't mine. When I ended up that moment was just a really, it's a mix-up. It's like war, the bullets are flying and you just kind of do what you do in that moment. And I walked out the door and I walked over to the elevator and I took it all the way down the stairs. Well, I told my boss I was leaving, and he got the tail end of a Shakespearean soliloquy about life. And, poor guy. He's got to think I'm fucking nuts. And I walked out of the office and I took the elevator down and I hit the street, and for the first time in my adult life I recognized that I was free. So I mean it was freedom, but not for it was true freedom. Like I recognized, and this is the thing that people don't realize in their life, that you always have more choices than you think you have. And that's what it was. It was a visceral reality for me at that moment, that you have the choice. You always have a choice, and I had made mine. So, yeah.
So that you used some interesting language there with bullets flying, that kind of stuff. And one of the things that really hit me when I was reading your book was the language around revolution. Yeah. How do you incite that revolution? It's one thing to get to that point where you recognise the need for it, but it takes a positive step. You talk a lot in your book as well about being a choice, not to lead an average life. How do you incite that revolution?
I mean, that's a hard question to answer. I think first you have to recognize that you have to be angry. You look back at revolution throughout all of human history, and like nobody's fighting revolution unless they're fucking pissed at somebody. They feel like they've been wronged, or they feel like society, whatever society that they're dealt with, or whatever contextual reality they're dealing with at the time, needs to be structurally altered. And that's what you have to you have to come to that point. Not everybody comes to that point in their life. For me, it was recognizing that I surrendered a piece of my life that I will never get back. And that's something, like, I think what it comes down to is the moment that you recognize that, for me, it was the moment that I recognized that this life is mine, and that it is my one and only. And that seems like it seems like poetry. And a lot of people can fluff it off like, poetic hippie bullshit, but I'm no hippie. And I recognize that's real talk. This is it. And I gave up years of my life playing somebody else's game. And I'm not going to do it with the rest. So with whatever, however many days I have, there's no way that I am going to live one day of mine, 1 hour, 1 minute at the behest of somebody else's idea of what my life should be. And that for me is something that was my it's an incendiary thing for me. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I get very passionate about it. That's why I write the way I do. Because for me, it's a matter of life and death. If we had 3 or 4 lives, I'd say, man, fuck it. Well, let's just let's stay as a banker. Let's see how it's like. But we don't have that luxury.
So you've got this revolution now incited, and you also say in your book, that it's hard to go back on a revolution once you've announced it.
Sure.
You've already announced it to your boss. You're getting married in 4 days. I can only imagine what's going through your brain.
Oh yeah.
I have to go and tell Melissa this.
Yeah. It was
so obviously, I mean that's your next step. So talk me through, that whole thing of breaking that to Melissa. Maybe she was in on it before, but of going through those steps with Melissa and working that. Okay, brave man.
Yeah.
And then,
Crazy,
man. And then what comes next? You've left this comfortable life that everybody would look at and go, "That guy's a success."
Sure.
Now go home and tell your wife, we're getting married in 4 days' time, and all, by the way.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have to start something new. So,
sure.
So what followed there?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on there, but yeah, I mean, but my first call was to Melissa, obviously. That happened, and now we're going on. That was like 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago, and there was that one moment of yes, and then there's that next moment of oh my god, I just paid for the oh shit, I just paid for the honeymoon and the wedding of an extraordinarily rich banker, and I hadn't saved much money, because in that world you don't save money because you're so minted that you don't have to. In many ways you spend more than you earn, which sounds ridiculous, but you do. So I knew where we were in that position, so I had to call Melissa, and I called her, and she was with her mom at the time, and they were doing wedding stuff, and as you can imagine, that's like the worst time to make that call. And but I'll never forget what she said to me, and it's very important. And for me, it was a moment it was a transcendent moment. She said, "I'd rather live with the real you under the Brooklyn Bridge than an impersonation of you anywhere else. I'm just glad I have you back." We've been together for many years. She's known me since I was 16 years old. We've been together since we were that young. So when a person knows you that long, everybody's a wild-eyed dreamer when they're a kid. So she knew me back then, and she had seen this turn I had taken, and so for her it was a return, and she was excited by that, and she knew the ramifications of what that can mean, but she was excited by the fact that this is the dude I knew, so that was obviously,
So what was it? So that the dude she knew was back. You were on the same page.
Yeah.
She was excited about having you back and what that could mean.
Sure.
So what did that mean? What flowed out? Then, you get married, you come back, but then you've got to start doing something.
Sure.
Pay the bills and pay the rent. And how did that look for you?
Yeah, I mean, on our honeymoon, I remember we had a yellow legal pad, and I was just jotting down ideas because I'm like, I got to make money, obviously, and one of the first things that I did was basically, it was just ideas, and my context was history. Basically thinking that my past would dictate my future. So I was looking into I was thinking about my career, history, my education, the things that I had done, and that is typically how we make decisions, isn't it? We don't think about creating new things as much as we think about choosing from the assortment of hors d'oeuvres that the world tells us that we're capable of, or that our history tells us that we're capable of, our personal history tells us we're capable of. So that's what I did, and I basically, created a one-man management consulting firm, finance and accounting. That's what I did. That's what I could do. And I picked up a couple of clients, and I was actually shocked at how easy it was to pick up clients. Within 2 or 3 months, I had 3 or 4 clients, which was enough for us to pay our bills. And I just thought, damn, this is going to work. This is all right. And then I was sitting there in a meeting with one of my clients. He's a PR guy in Midtown, Madison Avenue. And he was talking about his tax liability and his risk exposure and a few other things. And I just started to zone out, in the middle of this, yeah, exactly, as one does, in the middle of this bullshit. And then I caught myself, and I thought, why don't I want to be here right now? Like I was the guy. I got out of the dungeon. I got out of the fucking castle. I slayed the dragon. I got the girl, and I ran out. And now I'm here. I'm still standing. I'm still strong. I have clients. I'm like, and why the fuck I should be elated to be right here, right now. Yeah. And it occurred to me that I fucking hated that guy. And I hated all my clients. And I hated everything that I had ever done. The work itself. I hated all of that. Mm-hmm. And when that really soaked in, I recognized that this change for me wasn't a career change. And it was like a lot of entrepreneurs, they'll leave one thing. They'll leave like a job because I just thought I didn't want the incarceration of an office every day, and that if I can get out of that office every day, that I would be free. And a lot of entrepreneurs they create this problem for themselves. And what I ended up doing is leaving one prison, but then creating my very own. Except this time it was locked from the inside, and I was holding the key. And so that was a reflective thing, and I recognized that this moment was more of a revolution, and it was less of a career change. And at that point, Melissa and I sat down with a list, and we just thought, for the first time in our lives, ever in my adult life, I thought, what if I could start from scratch, you know? Yeah. Like, what if I could have a do-over?
Blank piece of paper.
A mulligan. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, what if I could just go from scratch? And it's a real, it seems like a very, you just write down what you want. But very few people do that. And I had never thought, like, I could start over, you know? We'd done that. We sat there. It took a very long time. And we just sat, okay, what is our life in 2 years? What would we like our life to look like? And we wrote down a lot of things. We wanted to work together. We had never done that before. I was a Wall Street guy. She was a teacher, so that didn't seem like there was any cohesion there, but we wrote that on the list. We wanted to travel. We'd always wanted to be adventurers, and we'd never done any adventuring.
Making up for that now.
Yeah, we're making up for it now, big time, yeah. And, we wanted to travel at least 50% of the time. We travel much more than that now, but that was like, a huge goal. Like, what if we could be nomads? And we just wrote down all these things. We wanted to do humanitarian work with at least 20% of our time. And we wanted to do projects on the web. I'd always been a designer, like an artistic kid growing up, but I was told you can't make money doing art. So I shelved that, but I wanted to do something, express myself in those ways. And so we wrote down all these things, and at the end of that exercise for us, we promised ourselves that we wouldn't wait. And we said that we would use this list as a filter for every decision that we would make going forward, no matter how excruciating. And that was it. That night, looking at this list, that night actually, I was so terrified, because when you actually write down what you want your life to look like, in 2 years' time, 5 years is a little bit of a pipe dream. 2 months is, who gives a shit? But 2 years, it feels like management. And you're looking at this, and you're like, is this attainable? Is this like too much? Am I being crazy? And I sat down to pen a letter to myself. I was so scared, so I just kind of got my composure. I sat down and I penned this letter to myself. First thing I ever wrote, and it was a letter to myself from the future me, from the braver me, from the me that was courageous and would go on adventures and was believed that he could change the world. I actually published it in my essays. It's one of the first things I published. So that was the moment that everything changed. That's what happened from that moment going forward. And then after that day, we basically, adventurers don't own a bunch of shit, And at the time we had like 2 storage units worth of
can't get that in the back.
Garbage. Yeah, exactly. All this. So funny. The storage industry is a $9 billion industry in the United States. I mean, what the fuck? They're like mausoleums to your past that you're just, So we just got rid of all of it. We threw it all away. We threw away everything we owned. We kept only what we could fit in these backpacker bags, which we still have to today. And we bought one-way tickets to Europe, and that was it. And basically the first. Obviously, we run a company called Misfit Incorporated now. The first expression that people tell me how Misfit started, and I just say it was me and Melissa as gypsies trading web design for bagels and lodging in places to stay. That was it. Like that's where we started, and we now employ 16 people, and we're just like doing all this. It's just nuts.
And it's interesting hearing you talk about that step you initially made from corporateville into consulting.
Yeah.
And then you say in the Life and Times about my goal was to tackle entrepreneurship and just start my own little management consulting business. Boy oh boy, did my ship sail far off course.
Right.
And I read that and I thought, did it sail off course, or did you just not realise the destination when you started? Because as we were talking about earlier, to me it feels as if you've found your middle.
Sure.
Because all of the person that Miss whatever her name was, I can't forget her name now.
Miss Mitchell.
Miss Mitchell said you were and would never be, and so on. But that was your artistic, that was design, that was the person you were. There was obviously an underlying desire to change the world then.
Yeah.
And then you kind of moved away from that. But it feels to me, looking in from the outside, like you very much now, your gifts, your talents, your passions, everything is lining up with what you and Melissa are putting your hands to.
Sure.
And so does it still feel like the ship sailed off course, or does it feel a bit more like, actually, we were never off course, we just never realised this is where we were going?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably more true. I think that, and what I mean by that is that we're very pragmatic in this world, so I assumed, me, especially back in that day and time, and I thought, I'm going to leave this job, I will start a business, and then this business will grow by X. So it's all very pragmatic. A few months into that, I recognized that wasn't me, and that it just wasn't who I was. So now, we run a business, and it's called Misfit, and we generate revenue, and we have, but anyone who knows me even a little bit knows that I don't give a shit about money.
Yeah.
I make it, but I don't care about it. I don't at all. I still live out of a backpacker bag to this day. And that's what I mean, because I thought when I left, I thought I would, at the time, and that's how life is, right? You live it, and then you look back and you learn from it. And as I was, I thought, I'm going to leave, and then I'm going to be a successful entrepreneur. And then I recognized, entrepreneurship is really not that interesting to me. And that's, and today, even that balance between, I feel like the line between entrepreneur and artist is very fine, and you're finding that people are, there's lots of people that kind of play in both those worlds, and they do a lot of things that don't generate any revenue like we do. Most of what I work on doesn't generate any revenue, and that's exactly how I like it, but it's gradient. It's a gradient world, and I think I'm a bit more artist than I am entrepreneur. Whereas some of my friends they're way more entrepreneur than they are. Like startup guys, they just want to go, they want to get VC, they want to go sell the thing in 5 years and then do it again. Yeah. Whereas that's just not, and that's cool. Like everybody's their own, but I recognize from my path that wasn't me.
You wrote one thing there. You said that there was a stark difference between the life I was meant to live and the life I was destined to lead, and that the chasm between the two laid squarely on my ability to overcome my greatest fear, and that maybe I was just average after all. And you then go on to talk about average quite a bit, about how average is a choice.
Yeah, sure.
Which makes a lot of sense.
I mean, it depends. Some people are asleep because of fear. I mean, whether you fear being average or you fear, like in this poem, whether you fear being great beyond measure or powerful beyond measure, either way it's fear, right? And fear is good, and so 1% of fear keeps us alive. 99% of fear keeps us asleep, And so a lot of people are living asleep. They're just slumbering while they're there, and in many ways, there's nothing you can do about that. There's nothing if you can't talk somebody out of their, sometimes, and we've all met those, what I'm saying, where you've done. What I can do is say, for me, I came to this, and again, when I was writing this, I was writing, convincing recognizing that for you, AJ, like average is a choice, man. You know what I mean? Because one of the most depressing, before that moment on December 31st, 2007, I was very, very depressed. And I can remember one of these moments, and it was really, really it was really painful for me, because when I was a kid, like a lot of kids, you think that you're special. You know, you think that you're special, that you're put here to do something that matters. And then I thought, in the middle of this fucking bullshit career, it kind of struck me like, man, maybe that was all a fluke. You know, maybe you're not special. You're just an average schmo. You're just an average dude. And that was the most terrifying thing to me, and that stuck with me. And that was it was a painful thing to accept, and I did accept it. So yeah, I mean, all I can do is just try to tell people I've been there, but that is a choice. We all choose to be average if we want to be, but you can step outside that at any. It comes back to Shakespeare, all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. We come to this, but we choose what the fuck we want to be. Yeah. When I was writing this stuff and when I started out my life, I wasn't an adventurer. I was acting the part that I wanted to be. Yeah. And sometimes that's how you live your life. When you start to look at your life like a novel and you start to view yourself as the protagonist in this grand adventure, then all of a sudden you're looking, even when you don't have the courage to make that step, you can at least look at the guy in the novel or the girl in the novel that you want to be and make the choice to be. Everybody wants to be Frodo, like you can, what I'm saying? Yeah. Like you can make that choice, even if it's not, and that will take you out of average. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So yeah, you say you're writing these letters to yourself, and I'm guessing therefore that a lot of what we read when we read The Life and Times is stuff you've experienced. And you mentioned before about fear and the effect that has on people accepting average and staying asleep. And there's one part that struck me where you wrote, because there will be quiet and deciduous moments littered throughout the next few weeks where you will come face to face with a fear that you know all too well. And that fear will want to suppress every dream in the quiet alcoves of your heart by gently whispering the dangers ahead and that you're just not good enough. And as I read that, I thought, this is a guy who's faced that fear. Yeah. So, I know I work alongside people, and I know you do, that are facing that same fear, and we each have to face our own demons. But how did you overcome that fear that maybe you were just not good enough? You were clearly fighting against it, but how did you finally defeat it?
I just did it anyway. I still don't think that I've defeated it. I think for the most part, I mean, we don't talk about fear enough. People act as though, here's something. I mean, if you're doing work that matters, you will always experience fear, and you will experience the fear that you're just not good enough to do what you're doing. Whether it's a Kickstarter campaign that you're launching or, what I'm saying? Because as soon as you start to stagnate and you're just doing your thing because it works, then, you have no fears because you just, and maybe you've arrived and that's all you wanted. But in a precipitous climb, in an adventure, and if that's what one's life is, if we're continuing to press ourselves and press into that horizon, you look at all the great adventures, Sir Francis Drake, you keep on peering into that horizon, you will always face fear. You just have to do it anyways.
It's accepting, isn't it, that we were meant for more, and that never ends.
Yeah, it never ends. It never ends unless you want it to end, and that's your choice. You can settle up on an island and just relax. Play it out. Yeah. But
But I'm figuring, so you come home from this great job with great prospects, and everyone's looking at you, friends, you're a success. It's Christmas time, and everything, everything's going well. Family, there's a wedding coming, and look at our, AJ's going to be a great provider, and it's going to be fantastic, and AJ and Melissa are going to have this great life, and then you come in and go, actually, not so much.
Yeah.
I'm guessing there was a bit of a backlash to that.
Yeah,
You talk in the book about how any kid can poke a stick
hole in a balloon, yeah.
And I'm figuring there were a lot of people poking holes in your balloon.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Talk me through that a little bit, because I think anyone who's trying to change the world is always going to find, for every one person who's the yay-sayer,
sure,
they'll find at least 99 who are the naysayers. And yet you're living proof that you can come out the other side of that and do something that the world looks at and says is absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
But yet you're living the life you feel that you were made for, and the life that you want, and you're having the ball doing it. So how did you silence the naysayers?
Well, I think really what it was, and you'll know where this adage comes from, but a prophet gets no honor in his hometown,
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Jesus can go around doing miracles all around Israel. He comes back to Nazareth and no one gives a shit.
Yeah.
right? And he said that, and it's brilliant, and it's because in your don't think that the people around you are going to support you, because they won't. The people around you want you to be who you always have been, because that's who they know and that's who they feel safe with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Like when I talk about like the system or society, I'm not talking about the industrialization of society. I'm talking about well-intentioned. That system, for me, that system is well-intentioned family, friends, colleagues that beckon you to comply. and to live the life that they always wanted you to live. And so I recognize that pretty early on, that I'm not going to get support, and I don't care. I'm not, and that's, that seems kind of harsh, but I'm not going to try to convince people, even my family, even the closest ones too. And those are the people that you feel like you have to convince, but you can't, because they are the ones that, for most of all, will not get it.
Yeah.
Because they've always known you as that normal dude, and what. And you cannot try to convince those people. Don't even try. Mm-hmm. You're going to go through a period, maybe your entire life, and maybe just a few years, where you just have to let it go. Yeah. And you have to be willing to look at people that love you and that you love them, and just say, I hear you, but I don't give a shit what you have to say. And if I had 3 lives, I swear to God that I would spend one of them listening to you. But I only have this one. Yeah. So I'm going to listen to me instead. Yeah. It seems like a more prudent choice. Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's what it was, and that's basically it. I didn't seek anybody's advice, and because I recognize that nobody gets this move, and nobody's going to get it.
So do you think that would be one of the major mistakes that people like us are sort of trying to make a commotion where we are? That one of the worst things that you can do, if that's what you're trying to do, is actually go and ask other people's opinion.
I don't ask anybody's opinion.
Just fix your view and follow that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Why? Yeah. And honestly, and it sounds harsh, but the reality is why? Yeah. It's your life. Yeah. It's your thing. Like, why? The personal opinions of those that I grew up with. What does that have to do with this new project that I'm doing, that there's no way that they're going to understand? They don't come from that world. Yeah. Even these new things that I'm doing, they have no context for it. And even from a cerebral perspective, like if we step out of just we know that they're not going to accept us, a prophet gets no honor in his hometown, but from a cerebral perspective, they don't have the context to understand it. Yeah. So you're literally asking, it's like me starting an ice cream shop and asking a butcher how to, you know what I mean? It's like they're not going to get it. They're not going to provide you with anything valuable. So don't ask, and just move on. Yeah. And see him at Christmas, buy him a bottle of Prosecco. Everybody likes Prosecco, right? That'll keep them off your back for a couple of years.
I love the idea that you have in there of every artist is a thief. I mean, we were talking earlier about Shakespeare and so on. And I was reading this, and I was reading a bit about Ovid and that story, and I was thinking, this is Romeo and Juliet. Oh, yeah. And then you actually said, and this was Romeo and Juliet.
Absolutely.
Thinking, that's sacrilege. You can't say that about Shakespeare. He didn't, didn't he? Yeah, but he did. And, I think there is this whole kind of something I come up against a lot when I'm working with organisations, is that there's this idea that we have to be unique, this idea that we have to create something that no one's ever thought of before.
Sure.
And then there's this argument that comes in from those who have thought of it before, well, we're already doing that.
Right.
So, it intrigued me as I read this whole idea that every artist is a thief. It's like, we don't have to be the one who creates something out of nothing that's never been done before. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to get you to expand on it. You don't expand on it much in the book. So just expand on the whole idea of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a great anecdote, and just because I'm a Shakespeare nerd, and so are you, but if you read The Tempest, I mean, Shakespeare lifted direct lines from Montaigne's work, from Montaigne's essays. Right. Direct lines that we know today, so... and that was within a context, not the entire play, but lines within the play that were beautiful, that he probably found beautiful, and he's like, how am I going to siphon this into my work? And he found a way to do so. All great art, anything that we respect and we admire, is an amalgamation of other art, filtered through the artist that creates it. Period. Doesn't matter what idea that people say, oh, Mark Zuckerberg, he created Facebook, he created social networking. MySpace was before Facebook, and Friendster was before that. So all he did was do it slightly better. Yeah. Bill Gates is the same thing. I mean, there are people that are taking influence. You know, I mean, Steve Jobs didn't create the phone; he just made it better.
Yeah.
You know, and he probably made it better through his experiences. So he appreciated simplicity, and he kind of brought all these things in his life, filtered them down through Steve Jobs, and then created the things that he created. That is true of any artist. If you look at Warhol's work, if you look at anybody, Picasso's work, it's all filtered down. If you look at the people who influenced that artist and the people that they admire, and usually we have those essays in that writing, you know, you can see what ended up filling. That's lovely. Yeah.
Thanking something.
Maybe we should have closed that window. Hey. Sorry, guys. So, yeah, I mean, it's all art is an amalgamation of other art. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of people think that they have to create something, you know, what's the big idea? Like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And what's that big idea? And you don't have to do that. You know, just experience everything. You know, don't read fucking marketing books. You know, don't read business. Like, get out there, go to plays, go to art shows, listen to beatbox poetry. You know, listen to some Jay-Z and then put on some like, let it all in. You know, let it all in into you, and through that you're going to be able to filter that, all the experiences that you have, filter that down through you, and then that's going to be imbued in your work. You know, and that's why one of the reasons at Misfit, I feel like, you know, people wonder why we can create so many things and launch so many. I honest to God think the reason why is because every single person that works in this, we're all travelers, we're all nomads, so we're all tasting new foods, hearing new music, meeting new people. Now, not everybody's going to do that, live that life, but you know, it's the same type of thing. Even in your town, like, bring it all in, because you're going to bring that to your work. And without those influences, you won't be able to create beautiful things. You know.
Yeah. Well, with creativity, you know, I mean, obviously, Misfits out there doing loads of stuff, and you just got to look on your website to see the diversity. We've got the Shakespeare's birthplace behind us, and we've got windmills over in the third world. So we've kind of got this massive diversity of projects, and you must have seen a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm conscious of your time, so just wrap it up now. But we'd love to hear, before we do, just what's been your favourite projects? You know, what have been the things that have really stuck with you, and what are you working on at the moment that's really exciting you?
Sure, yeah. Probably, I mean, one of my most favorite projects was the project that you mentioned, that in the Good Misfit project, where we spent the month of June. It was kind of a very simple project when you really look at it, but we basically put a call out to our community and said, would you join us in raising this money to build this windmill in Kenya, and for a village in Kenya that we knew that we'd work with. And the premise was that we would raise this money, this $15,000 needed for this one windmill. We would solve one real problem in the world together, and Melissa and I would fly out to Kenya and do live video calls from the foot of the windmill once it's up. So giving, as you know, running, you know, being involved in charity is very abstract. People can't see what, and to some degree that's the nature of giving, and that's unfortunate, you know, but we wanted to dismantle that, at least in our world. So it's not abstract. You're not just giving money and then not knowing exactly what's going to happen to it. We're going to solve this one issue together. And then we showed them visually, like, this is what we've done, you know, live in real time. And it was very cool, and it was very kind of transcendent, and it was a fun project to do. And it was very fulfilling because as opposed to me and Melissa partnering with an NGO, which we've done since we were gypsies, well, we're still fucking gypsies, but so, you know, since back in the day till today, we do it all the time. Last year we partnered with WaterAid and did a project called The Big Dig, and we ended up raising $3.8 million over the summer using Instagram to tell real-time stories from them. It was just like nuts, you know. But this last one was just us, just our community, and partnering together. It was something that was very meaningful, and now we're going to make it an annual thing. We're doing these dinners throughout the year, and we're doing all types of things. So that was probably the most, at least in recent history, probably the most meaningful project I've worked on, or that we've worked on Misfit. Some of the stuff that we're working on now, I mean, we do a lot of different things, so it's hard to, but key in on, I mean, we just launched a design and apparel company called Trendy Misfit. We're really excited about it. You know, I'm a designer, and I like to geek out on, you know, creating tactile things. I love the web, but I hate the infinite scalability of the web, because I feel like art is not inherently infinitely scalable. every artist has placed parameters in the past on that art. Doesn't matter what it is, and so I like playing in a world in which there are parameters and there are physical limitations to what can go out. So we just do one product a month. We only have it for 30 days, and after that, you can't get it anymore. And it raises $1 a day. So we do fun things. And this last month was a throw pillow that we created with a quote from the book. Yeah, it was cool. It was fun, and people dig it, and people bought, have purchased it. So that's something fun that we've been working. We're working on a bunch of other stuff.
Cool. Sounds exciting. So where next from here now?
Traveling.
Yeah.
Well, we'll be in Stratford for probably another 3 weeks. I run a marathon in Venice, and then we'll go back to the United States. We have book tour events here in the UK. Actually, we're launching the book in Cambridge, which is cool, with some Cambridge Misfit. There's a lot of Misfits out there. And I dig it. I love those folks. So we're doing it out there, and then we'll probably spend. The book tour in general it's going to be across 6 continents at the end of the day. We're trying to get to the moon, but I don't know if that'll be possible.
Speak to Richard Branson.
Yeah, exactly. So then we're going to go back to the States and do probably 100 different cities and all the stuff. Yeah,
busy times.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for this time in front of the camera, but also the time before. It's just been amazing.
No, you're so welcome.
You've opened our eyes to a whole world of possibilities.
It's my pleasure, man. I love hanging out with Misfits. This is what I live for.
Thank you very much.
No, you're welcome.
Cheers.